Hello and welcome to Beyond the Checkered, the Thermal Club edition. I realize this is a day late, so I want to acknowledge why it's a day late. Not sure how many people who would be watching and listening know, but we also own a jewelry store. We bought it from your dad about 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago. And we were at a trade conference the last couple of days with a group of people.
Yeah, so it's a group of jewelers. There's wholesalers, retailers, pawn shop owners, everything in between. And we get together at least 2 times a year. And it's a meeting of the minds. There's a learning day and a leadership day. I was on one of the panels for the first time, so that was
Did a great job
cool.
on the panel.
Thank you. And then the last day is what we call a trading session. So everyone buying and selling goods. It's always great to see everyone. I mean, some of these people I've literally known my entire life. And I was just a little girl running around, and now I'm a decision maker. So that's always fun for me. And there's a couple of us that are all kind of second generation who have been part of this group forever. And so it's just fun to do business together and see each other. And yeah.
So having said that, today's episode is brought to you by George Thompson Diamond Company, georgethompson.com, where you can always get the family discount. Check us out. Also on Instagram, some incredible videos of you sorting diamonds and a lot of really fun stuff, which is a very different industry than motor racing and Indycars. But Indycars were on track at the Thermal Club. Last year was $1 million challenge. Exhibition race only. This year, they extended pit lane so that everyone could do pit stops. And it was a full-fledged points-paying race.
Yes. And we were there on Friday.
We were there on Friday.
To see, again, it was like the meeting of two families this weekend. So we got to see our racing family and our jewelry family, which was so, my heart is full. Although I'm pretty tired.
it was full on. But first thing, Robert Schwartzman in the Prema car
had a fire
in first practice. It sounded like a failure of the fuel system. So not an oil fire or an engine failure or anything like that, but fuel leaked and then ignited on the exhaust. Everything went dead, probably because of the fire burning through some wiring or something.
Or whatever, yeah.
Gets out. AMR safety team, unbelievable. Johnny on the spot as always. Especially with an over 3-mile racetrack.
Yeah, it's a very large facility, kind of like a little like Barber, like goes back and forth. So it maybe doesn't feel that big, but it's long.
It's a long racetrack, and they don't even use all of the racetrack that Thermal has available. There are 3 different loops they can use, and they combine 2 out of the 3 for this layout. But it meant that the Prema team worked until 4:30 in the morning because they had to go to a backup car. Now, you and I were talking about this, how the challenge for a new team is that despite being prepared,
yes,
I think that's the first.
They had a backup car, which is great.
It still takes a lot of work to get the backup car up and running. And for me, I think it's important to say it's not a knock on the team or their preparation. Right? It's just what experience in IndyCar does.
Yeah, and because we had talked in the preview podcast, like, we kind of wonder with a new team what kind of teething issues they're going to have. And I brought this up to you in the car ride from Palm Springs to Irvine, where the jewelry conference was. And I was like, man, I felt like it took a long time to get that backup car up and going, just from our experience from when you've had to do backup cars or whatever.
And I think there are 2 things. Firstly, with a fire, you don't know. You have to be really careful, and it slows the process down when you have to be careful to make sure that all the damage is assessed and dealt with correctly. So you can't just unbolt things. Like if there was a crash and there was damage to the tub, you could just unbolt the parts that weren't a part of the tub to the new car. With a fire, you have to do an assessment and then figure out what can transfer, because despite being a backup car, it's not like a rolling chassis right away.
It's not ready to go.
Because the priority is getting the primary car up and running to the highest level possible.
And that was Prema's number one goal early in the season.
I would presume so. You don't, with the resources available, you don't build 3 full race cars. You build 2 full race cars, and then when you have some extra time, you have some extra parts, they go on the backup. Now, I will say, having worked all night and missed all of practice, Robert Schwartzman did an unbelievable job to finish 22nd on Sunday.
Yeah. With no yellow.
No practice, no yellows, no chance to catch his breath or learn or anything like that. The only true laps he did were qualifying, warm up, and the race. Yeah. But having gone through that all-nighter, they now have a better understanding and a better prepared spare. Hopefully they don't need it. But if they do,
you plan for the worst and hope for the best.
That's right. So that was a monumental effort by Prema, I think, worth noting how big an effort and some of the unique challenges because they are a first-year team.
Yeah, just those teething issues. I think if this had happened to a more established team that had a full off-season to build a backup car, one, the guys would have been better rested. He probably would have gotten some laps in practice and been, I think he did an incredible job for what he had, but like, he's a rookie. He's never seen these tracks before. So missing that time on track is really, really valuable.
Yes, absolutely. And then that was into qualifying. And other than Will Power's fight back in the race on Sunday from 21st on the grid to 5th,
he finished 5th?
Or 6th. 5th
no,
or 6th.
He did not finish 5th.
Yeah. He had an incredible run through. Will Power finished 6th. Excuse me. Moved 15 spots forward.
Yeah. And all just like, he didn't have like a great, he had a fine strategy, don't get me wrong, but there weren't chances to leapfrog people with strategy or anything. Like, that was just passes on track.
He did a really nice job.
But other than that, Penske didn't.
It was shocking.
Yeah.
In qualifying, they were 17th, 21st, and 5th or something.
Yeah, they did not show up.
And Scott McLaughlin had a shocker of a day. Contact with Devlin DeFrancesco. Greatest marketing thing I ever saw, though, was there was a video online of Scotty Mack and Devlin having an animated, heated, colorful words
and some gestures
at the end of the race.
Yeah.
After the race, discussing the incident, that there was contact before they even got to the start line.
Yeah.
Scott McLaughlin is sponsored by Good Ranchers.
Mm-hmm.
And Connor Daly made a comment about, it's great to see beef this early in the season. And Good Rancher said, beef, sponsored by Good Ranchers.
Nice.
It was very well played. Very well played. But it was an all-green race.
Yeah.
And Scott McLaughlin was the only retirement, not from the contact, but from overheating and major hybrid issues.
And there were a couple of their drivers that lost their hybrid, right?
Yeah. So one of the conversation pieces coming out of the weekend was cooling.
Yeah.
So everyone adjusts cooling within the car mechanically for engine operating temperatures. Oil temperature, too low on an oil temperature, you lose horsepower, right? And too high, it damages the engine, you lose horsepower.
Yeah.
The other thing is you want to run as limited cooling as possible because that means closing off those big air intakes. So it's like if you stuck your hand out the window doing 100 miles an hour.
It's like a sail.
Yes. If you left it open, all that wind, that's extra drag, but you turn it, you close it off just a little bit, you get less drag.
Yeah.
So it's always a balancing act. From what I understand, the Ganassi cars aired on the side of extra cooling for the hybrid. It's going to be the hottest race, 40 degrees warmer in the race than in warm up, north of 90 degrees ambient, track temp above 125. And it meant that Alex Palou, winning by 10 seconds, had the use of his hybrid every lap.
Yeah.
And there were comments that the hybrid deployment was worth about 0.3 of a second versus no hybrid
per lap. Yeah.
So that's a huge impact in a 65-lap race.
Yeah. I completely missed all that. I knew that there were some hybrids not working, but I didn't realize how sensitive the hybrids were to temperature. And maybe the teams didn't know either.
And I think everyone's learning. I mean, despite being 7, 8, 10 races, 12 races into using this new hybridization, it's the first time that it's been that hot.
Yeah.
You know, it was introduced at Mid-Ohio, and it was cooling off late summer last year. And they've increased the output of the hybrid this year. They felt like the reliability was really good last year. They could squeeze or push the envelope, squeeze that package a little bit more, and that added load, a little more heat sensitive. And I think they're seeing some pieces. There was a part introduced for this weekend to help shutter off or block off some of that air intake to the hybrid. Some teams chose to use it and run a little hotter. Some chose not and use a little more drag. So that it's always a trade-off. It's a question of which one was right. And I think the proof's in the pudding there.
Yeah. I mean, Chloe won by a lot.
Yeah, I was talking with his crew chief, who I've worked with in the past, and
Ricky Davis.
He's
we love Ricky.
Great mechanic, great crew chief, great team player, and they're continually impressed with Alex Blow's presence, composure, and speed when it matters.
Yeah.
They can.
I think your text to Ricky was, "Are you guys going to leave anything for anyone else all year? Or are you just going to take it all?" And he says they're just going to try and take it all. So watch out, other teams.
Yeah. They
have a plan to just sweep
the year. But it came down to strategy as well, right? They saved their new set of the red sidewall, those softer Firestone alternates for the last stint. Now, strategically, that makes sense because with a yellow, and I know we said there were no yellows, but you don't know that. Hindsight's 2020. With a yellow closing the pit lane, you want to make your last pit stop as soon as possible.
Yes.
Because if you don't, and you haven't made your last stop, excuse me, a frog in my throat. If you haven't made your last pit stop and a yellow comes out, thank you, then you're stuck at the back of the line.
Yeah, you lose track position, right?
So you want to make your last stop first.
Yeah.
But you want to make it late enough that you can go hard, not have to save fuel and compromise ultimate speed and lap time.
And I do think Ganassi is the Ganassi strategy crew is the very best at finding that perfect little window.
And they were willing to gamble that the alternates were going to be the tire. Because had the alternates fallen apart 10 laps into a 20-lap stint,
it would have been.
It wouldn't have worked because they started on used reds.
Yeah.
And then went to primaries, and then when used reds, new reds in the stops.
But okay, so let's say, they're watching all the other cars. There's guys who are starting on new reds or new softs, as we noticed in the broadcast, they were calling them soft and hard. So new softs and used softs, and primaries, right? So if you're watching these play out, you can use your new softs in that third stint and leave some hards for the last stint.
Right. And shorten
you
that.
You give yourself a little bit of wiggle room there to make that call during the race.
Right. And if you know that it's going to be the last, it's always going to be the longest because you have to steal a phrase from Townsend Bell, avoid the danger zone when you're exposed to a yellow and a closed pit situation. You're going to want your best tire for that last stint as long as it doesn't compromise her.
I want to go back and just describe that for maybe somebody who doesn't understand the strategy as much. So if some people have pitted, if even one car has pitted and a yellow comes out and pits are closed, they open the pit lane so that people can get service while the track is still yellow. Correct. So people are making laps around that track at 80 miles an hour instead of 150 miles an hour. So the pit lane, we talked last time, whoever wins the race is going to be the person who takes less time to get from checkered or green to checkered.
Right.
So that time differential is held. But because someone pit before the yellow, they are going to be out on track before anyone who pit under yellow. So they're going to get that track position.
Correct. And it comes down to the fact that it takes At thermal, it was 35 to 38 seconds.
That hit, it felt so long.
It did feel really long. But that's the same amount of time as an Indianapolis 500.
Yeah.
And it's 45 miles an hour, not 60 like it is on a big oval. But you essentially get a free pit stop because when it goes yellow, everyone packs up behind the pace car.
Mm-hmm.
And that time you've lost gets erased as you close up to the cars that haven't pitted yet.
Mm-hmm.
When they peel into pit, you're doing 45 miles an hour down pit lane and stops in their box for 5 to 7 seconds. You go by them at 80 miles an hour on the racetrack.
Yes, exactly.
So that's where the advantage comes.
Yes. So, yes.
You can be exposed. Now, there are times where what's known as an overcut, someone stops, you go 2 or 3 laps longer, going fast.
Yeah.
You can come out ahead of them.
Because you've made up that time on track while they were slow and stopped at pit lane.
Right. Slow and stopped on pit lane, but also on cold tires and full fuel.
Yeah.
You're on hot tires and low fuel.
Yeah.
As long as the tires, like, that works when the tires don't degrade aggressively. We saw at St. Pete, the softs degraded aggressively.
Yeah.
So the undercut was smarter for where you came in early and had fresh tires for those that were going slower. So it's a time dilation game on track in pit lane and what tires and fuel level everyone's working.
Yes.
It's a very dynamic situation. It's a lot of fun to think about.
But that's why we started the podcast, right? Because in order to really enjoy IndyCar, you kind of have to understand all this stuff. And the broadcast, as good as it is, doesn't have a ton of time to describe these things in detail.
They do a great job.
They do.
And Townsend and James have both lived it, and Will is bringing so much enthusiasm. Yep. And Kevin and Jack in pit lane are telling the stories, boots on the ground as much as they can. And they're all pros. Just when you're covering so much on-track action, we saw it. What happened to that guy? Where'd that go?
Why is that guy left down? Yeah.
And it was because there was so much good racing up front. And
mid-pack, right? There's good racing all around.
Sometimes with an all-green race, it just spreads out. But I think the abrasiveness of the track, how dusty it was. It's out in Palm Desert, right? It's dusty. Coachella Valley. So it's very dusty. If anyone drops a wheel, it pulls clouds of dirt onto the track. And so the line got narrower and narrower, which meant passing got harder and harder.
Well, and I know that I think Santina was kind of holding up a line of cars, and he said that his hybrid wasn't working. So if that's 0.3 a lap, that's enough to hold up a pack of cars, but it's not enough for the cars to get by. Right. So, it meant that there was a lot of good racing mid-pack.
Yes, absolutely. McLaren are doing everything they can and proving week in, week out that they deserve to not be talked about as a midfield team or a small team. They want to be
one of the ringers,
as a part of a conversation of the powerhouses.
Mm-hmm.
That is Penske, Andretti, Ganassi, McLaren. Mm-hmm. They walked out the front row just as they did in China in the Formula One race. It was cool to kind of see those corollaries back and forth and see some of the support between the two. As well as still tired from.
Oh, guys, I'm so tired.
As well as, I think the other thing I noticed is that ECR's investment from the Heartland Food Group.
It was so exciting to see Alex in the Fast Six, for sure.
Alex Rossi qualified in the Fast Six. Christian Rasmussen up there fighting the top 10, fell just outside at the finish. But 2 top 10s in a row for Alex Rossi.
Yeah, they seem to kind of not sputter out, but have some trouble at the end of the race. I think maybe their tire strategy wasn't because I think he was on the hards. Alex was on the hards at the end or something like that. And
it just ended up finding kind of a rear guard action.
Yeah.
What we saw in that last stint was new softs were the best. I mean, Alex just chewed through the McLarens. Chewed through the McLarens, excuse me. New reds were the next. Pato was running just a couple of half a second to a second slower.
Whoa. You said Hello had new reds.
Yes.
You just said
Pato, excuse me, was on new Pato.
There you go.
Yep.
Okay.
Sorry. So he was absolutely slower. I think used softs were just that little bit better. Maybe the new hards, but I don't know that I have a true baseline. That's just a feel I got. The other one who I thought was really impressive this weekend in the race, continues to be impressive in qualifying and the race, right? Meyer Shank Racing. Another small team that I don't know what the cost is for the Ganassi type Martin type, but it's worth every penny.
I think it's worth every penny. Yeah. I mean, they're really, they qualified they closed out the second row.
Yep.
They closed out the second row in qualifying, ended up 5th and 7th. But then again, we're talking about them not being able to translate those results in qualifying into the race. 5th and 7th is nothing too shabby. Don't get me wrong, but it's not third, fourth,
where they qualify.
Where they
right?
qualify.
Like, if on race day, the number one goal is, well, on qualifying day, the number one goal is to start first. Race day is to do better. Same as where you start.
Yeah.
So if you qualify third and fourth, you want to have 2 cars on the podium.
And I something's tingling in my brain. I think Rosenquist had a long stop.
I can't remember exactly, but
because we had to watch the race in 2 different sections.
That's true.
So like we started the race live, and then we had to pause it because I had to go be on that panel, and then we came back and watched it later that day. So like we just didn't get like the whole continuum of the race.
Yeah, so it was a little disjointed, but at the same time, I think that's 2 races in a row that didn't get the results translated better than qualifying.
Yeah.
Like 2 top 10s, that's a great result.
Great result. I'm not discounting their results.
How do you go from great to acceptable?
How do you just make sure that you are getting the best result possible after, qualifying? It was less tight this weekend, but qualifying in Indycar is just super tight. So how do you make sure that when you've done the good work on Saturday, you do the great?
So I disagree that it was less tight because, firstly, 3-mile racetrack, 99-second lap in qualifying. So that's a longer lap. So even if you're off by half a tenth on a 90-second lap, that's 200ths on 300ths on a 60-second lap. So
that math is boggling us.
But
I hear what you're saying.
But Santino missed out on transferring by something like 0.007 or something.
Yeah,
like
but
nothing.
Again, I was busy, so I didn't watch all of qualifying. But wasn't Pato, or at least in the early stages of qualifying, wasn't someone up by half a second of the lap, or
a couple 2 or 3 tenths for sure? Yeah, which is when you get it right and you're on, and it doesn't even.
It is like
feel
a 16-turn racetrack, so there's a ton of time to lose and gain time.
And it's a very interesting laid out track. I've never driven there, I will say that. But there are some parts, especially the first half of the lap, which is one loop, is more slower, sort of stop, turn, go corners. And then when you get into the second loop, it's a lot flowier. Yeah. So in qualifying, when alternate start finish, point out that they use a different timeline in practice and qualifying than they do in warm-up in the race.
And I think I know why.
Go ahead.
Okay. So they put it right, the alternate start finish, they put it right before pit in so that after you run your flyer lap, just go straight into pit lane.
Correct.
You aren't maybe impeding on somebody trying to get back to pit lane after you've put your banger lap up.
It also saves track time, tires. Yeah. Because on a 3-mile racetrack, if you finish your lap on the front straight, right in front of pit lane.
They do that on almost all.
They do it on all the racetracks. And it's so you hit the checker, they show the checker to the alternate start finish for practice for qualifying and pit right away.
Yeah.
Right? And it means that they can do a little quicker turnover to other sessions and getting cars back. It's an efficiency tool that is very valuable.
Yeah.
And the race starts and finishes in front of the big grandstands and the big pit lane.
Yeah.
So, because of that, I don't. Oh, that's right. That goes with start finish right at the end of the lap. The beginning of the lap is a lot of slow, stop, turn, accelerate corners.
Yeah. So a lot of acceleration and deceleration.
Yep. So the rear tires get a lot of longitudinal loading. The last part of the track, so like I think it was turn 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, are all high speed, long load, decelerating, like decreasing radius corners. It's a huge amount of lateral load.
Yeah.
So on with the one lap of qualifying on those softs, beginning of the lap, put a lot of heat into them on heavy braking, heavy acceleration. You don't want to spin them because when you get to the end of the lap and you want to lean on them laterally, you got to make sure they're.
So you're just degrading the tire on all angles throughout that lap.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's one of the reasons why the strategy conversation was so interesting about what the better tire was for the whole stint.
Yeah.
But a great race.
It was entertaining. It was good. It's nice to see a little more racing on the West Coast for us because it means we get to go see people.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, next week's West Coast again.
Couple weeks. Next race is down on the streets of Long Beach. It's the 50th anniversary. Love that race. It's a race I went to as a kid. I remember standing in line for autographs Friday afternoon. If you haven't gone to Long Beach as a fan, it's a very unique environment because it feels like a street party.
Yep.
The convention center has so much going on.
Yep.
But also Friday afternoon, they open the paddock up and you can go and get the autograph session is not at a central tent.
Yeah, it's
at the back of everyone's tee.
Yeah.
So you can wander the paddock, get autographs, see the mechanics working on the cars. Really cool event. It's the last time I drove an Indycar was at Long Beach, so still holds a special place in my heart. It's just a couple of hours.
Good. So we'll be trackside for that. I think both of us are going to go watch the race there. So we'll probably have to come home and re-watch the race to figure out everything that happened. And then we'll be back that Monday. And we forgot to ask you guys questions, so we don't have any question and answer.
Yeah, we didn't get any questions. But if you have follow-up questions after watching, hit us up on social media. I'm Charlie Kimball on Instagram. Kathleen Kimball with only one L because that's a tradition on Instagram. And let us know what questions you have, and we will try and answer them either on social media or through quick video clips in following up this episode. Thanks for tuning in. Don't be afraid to share this if you're enjoying it with your friends. If you're not, let us know why, and we'll figure out how to make it better for you. But like and subscribe, and we'll see you after Long Beach.